welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Um, everybody, well, people are still filtering. I continue to filter in. Um, but yes, we're looking forward to giving you an update on our progress. With this exciting project and kind of where we're up to. So let's get going. Before we do, quick housekeeping. We will record the session and share it with you afterwards, along with all the slides. And please, can you use the Q&A function, not the chat, for any questions that you may have, and we'll pick these up as and when. We we might have time to go through this towards the end, but if we don't, we'll pick them up and we'll get them sent out to you, along with um, after the slide deck and everything come out to you. So why are we here? We all share a challenge. We all face a challenge. As a community energy sector, we often tackle the hardest problems that private markets don't reach and don't want to touch. We have the shared focus of equity, fairness, and community benefit. Today is all about one solution to this, our Net Zero Terrace Streets project. We're bringing mainly a community energy audience today, with some local authorities and other experts to share the progress on our Net Zero Terrace Streets project. Welcome to everyone and everybody wherever you may be. I'm Andy Pinches. I'm the Operations Director at Rossendale Valley Energy. I've worked in and around community energy and fuel poverty for many years, with most of my work in Greater Manchester with Green Doctors, with groundwork that I'm sure a few will be familiar with, both as an advisor and looking after that team as well. And then other energy efficiency roles in wider and retrofit. And we know that tackling our housing stock is an ongoing problem across the country. We've all struggled to cobble together support packages from ever-changing network of grants and schemes and whatever the like comes through. Tackling terraces of old stone solid walls. Many of these are 150 years old with cold and damp problems, fuel poverty, and involving and including communities in decision making, achieving high standards of retrofit across all tenures and income levels, struggling to get contractors in place, grow local supply chains. We exhort to bring in innovative finance, but we need easier ways to achieve this. So let's hear about what we're developing now to shape the future of terraced housing in your communities. So today I'm joined by three experts in the field. All have worked across fuel poverty and community sector as well for many years. Currently, they're working through the details of the Net Zero Terrace Streets solution. We've got John Taylor, who's head of capacity building at Community Energy England, Louise Marix-Evans, who's the strategic director at Rossendale Valley Energy, and we've got Natalie Whittam, the Net Zero Street officer working at Rossendale Council. So to kick things off, I will first pass you over to John. Away you go.
Great. Thank you very much, Andy, and thanks everyone for coming along today. Yeah, having worked in this area for 10, 15 years now, seen so many different government schemes come and go. We know that tackling energy efficiency and retrofit in our homes is not an easy business, especially from the consumer's point of view or the household's point of view. There's a mix of government and energy company funding for the fabric and building improvement side. We've had various acronyms of schemes like HUG, Green Homes Grant, LAD, EcoFlex, which can supply insulation measures. We've had the technology heating system incentives to support heat pumps, new boilers, things like the boiler upgrade scheme, previously the renewable heat incentive and the feed-in tariffs for solar panels and renewable heating. Hopefully that's now coming together in newer programs like the Warm Homes Local Grant. And hopefully there's always room to learn from previous schemes that have gone before. On the revenue energy bills side, there's also means tested payments to help people get more money to pay for their bills during cold weather, like winter fuel payments, cold weather payments, and various discount schemes. So yeah, the eligibility for these schemes don't always align either. They can be complex and constantly changing with every redesign. So typically it's for households with incomes below 36,000 a year. Depends whether they're on or off the gas grid, health conditions, yeah, benefit claimants come into play, and also the current energy performance level of the dwelling, if you've got an EPC that's already relatively high. So we've tried various approaches previously. There's kind of more common one that we see is kind of the individual property or focusing on particular tenures like social housing. And this is kind of picking off houses one by one as they're ready to make their change. It could be supporting people through an advice service like a one-stop shop, which pulls together all the advice and grants available in a local area. Or are there benefits by going larger and tackling it street by street or neighborhood level retrofit? So trying to give a common goal for everybody in a common housing situation to all make the shift together at the same time, bringing along all the tenures along that street, and hopefully unlocking economies of scale at the same time. Um, Being from Community Energy England, I think we're really interested in this net zero terrace streets model. Traditionally, the sector has been focused on the electricity generation side of things. So a lot of people think of, yeah, rooftop solar on schools, community wind turbines, things like that. But I think the Climate Change Committee report that came out this week emphasizes it's not just generating clean electricity, it's how we use it that's important as well. It's ultimately all about giving people warm and comfortable homes. We're keen to see our members expand from generation into giving energy advice and getting involved with retrofit services. Nearly half of members are doing that already. And in terms of growth that we've seen through our State of the Sector report, which you're seeing a summary of your screen on at the moment, yeah, 72 new organisations have launched into the energy advice side of things in the past year. Also, we've got organisations looking at smart grid services as well. So looking at aggregating batteries and heat pumps to offer flexibility services to the grid. Really exciting angle there as well. Critically, our members, what we provide is that sense of community ownership and a democratic operation to delivery that helps bring out higher levels of trust and better outreach and engagement with those hard to reach communities. So it's an angle that is often missed from kind of more centrally or council delivered schemes. Having that community input can be that missing ingredient to really get out there on the ground. This puts us in a really strong position in the community energy sector to partner with other enablers like local authorities in devising solutions, hopefully in every single local authority area that's appropriate to their geography. Yeah, and reaching the parts of the community that they haven't been able to reach before. So what we're looking to do with this net zero terrace streets scheme kind of need all these things to happen at the same time to have a successful program. This three-legged stool kind of captures it quite well. We need on the one hand, the technical solutions, which we know exist in terms of all the heat pumps, the insulation, batteries, solar panels. You need to be able to finance them without how do we get this technology out to people without having them to borrow a lot of money without various obvious outcomes? So making it within the reach of people and the majority of people that really need it. And then there's the behavioral angle as well. This needs to move from being something that takes up a lot of research and knowledge and a risk factor to something that becomes being seen as easy and normal. And by doing it along with your neighbours and friends, hopefully it takes the hassle out of all the paperwork, getting all the multiple quotes, which currently puts people off acting. And then I think, yeah, tying these three legs together with coordination, quality, building trust, that sense of place. Um, if we had a program that pulled all these things together, then we think that's how we achieve that outcome of faster decarbonised homes. That's what we're trying to achieve in the Net Zero Terrace Streets project.
Thanks, John. That was a really great summary. Um, okay, so in the rest of the session, we'll be giving you a quick recap on Net Zero Terrace Streets. What's it all about? Some insights into how Rossendale Valley Energy and Rossendale Borough Council are working together. Quick update on the 3 demonstrator properties that we're working on as part of this project, covering our prep work as well as what we've done so far. A short progress update on our finance and investment work, an update on Looped Energy Communities CIC, which has been set up to replicate the scheme across the UK through licensing and eventually social franchising. An overview of the latest support available from community energy organisations, and we'll hear from John again in a little bit. And then finally, we'll tell you what's coming up and how to stay in touch with us. So without any further ado, let's crack on, and I'll head over to Louise to kick off talking about our project aims. Louise.
Hi, thanks, Andy. Hi, everybody. Right, I'm going to give you a quick whiz through what we're doing. It's just a quick recap. You can actually find out more about this on a previous webinar we did, and we'll make sure you've got the link to that. So the Net Zero Terrace Street project was set up to find a replicable and scalable solution to the challenge that's presented by our terraced houses. So you probably know this, terraced houses, old, often stone built, no cavity walls, hard to heat, hard to retrofit, and you get cold, damp, and mold. In fact, I was looking at mold in my own house this morning. And we've got about 6 million terraced houses. I mean, if you're up north, you can look out the window and probably see them. So we've got 6 million are of the smaller type, 2 to 3 bed terraces across the UK. Of those, a high proportion are in the private rented sector. We know about a quarter of people in private rented sector live in fuel poverty. And like John said, we've got issues where we can't get grants to people. So residents of terraced houses often miss out when it comes to the affordable low carbon solutions that we can see our friends and neighbours who've got a nice neat driveway or lots of outdoor space and a nice easy roof to stick a solar panel on. They're getting hold of the grants and the incentives, and the people in terraces can be missing out. And this is particularly because a lot of terraces don't have space for an air source heat pump outside, especially if you look at back-to-backs. You'd have to stick them up on brackets on the wall, which is a bit of a nightmare. So they're moving away. They're missing out from the boiler upgrade scheme too. And as we move away from gas boilers, or that becomes mandated, that default choice for people who own terraced houses will be putting in an electric boiler. So it's fairly cheap to put in. But they're really expensive to run because we've got that more expensive electricity problem. And that's going to push people into further problems with higher bills and struggling to keep warm. So our sort of exam question was, how do we make sure no one's left behind in this energy transition, that they get healthier, warmer homes with affordable low carbon energy? So what we're doing here is trying to deliver all the legs and rungs on the stool that John just outlined. So we're taking a community focused, really detailed, practical and local approach, and we're bringing together multiple parts to come up with a single sort of packaged solution. So here's our summary. If we go on the next slide, I'll outline this for you. So here are the ingredients for what Net Zero Terrace Street's going to be. There's going to be physical infrastructure. So there'll be a package of retrofit that reduces the heat load of that house. So heating and hot water can be provided by a around 6 kilowatt, 5.8 kilowatt ground source heat pump. We will include ventilation because we've got that mold and cold issue here. And we'll also be looking at least disruption. So that heat pump in the house, the little heat pump, will be connected to a shared ambient loop of boreholes connected down the whole street. On the top of the house, solar panels will help reduce the electricity costs, and that will form a sort of community energy scheme across those roofs, excess going back into the grid or going into storage locally, and the critically profits from that generated back to push down the cost to residents. Sat on top of all that physical infrastructure, the retrofit, the technology and the boreholes, we will be installing a smart local energy system. Now that's under development with a lot of work with the Network Innovation Allowance and was It's called SIF Alpha, some Ofgem funding with Electricity Northwest. So this will be a system that gives customers access to affordable tariffs. It'll help them through their home energy management system and across the community energy system in their area, find the best times to have heating and hot water, and to store that, and when to use it and when to flex it. So it puts that system around the place, around the cluster of homes. That will help us tackle the spark gap between the gas and electricity price, which keeps us using cheaper gas compared to electricity. That will link everybody up. So that will also be able to provide flexibility services into the grid and therefore make more money. It'll also help us share benefits across the houses. We're really interested in this. If your roof's not so suitable for solar, you shouldn't be missing out on that. So there'll be what we're calling a fair share scheme, where working together, people can benefit and no one's left behind. The last thing, well, it's not quite the last thing, a really important thing is that we can't expect people to find big chunks of money to pay for this upfront. So as I think John or Andy said, it's multi-tenure. So you'll have renters, owner-occupiers, people with money, people without money. We might have social landlords. We might even have little shops or businesses. If you look at any terrace, you get shops too. So we want no upfront cost. And the cost of the investment will be sat on that infrastructure, and it'll be paid back through a standing charge or a subscription over the long term. So we're not going to also stick the cost or debt on the person or the property. It'll sit on that infrastructure, just like our electricity and gas grids do now, and we pay a standing charge. The whole thing will be run by a local organisation. They'll install, maintain and operate the service based on community interest values, and then make sure those values accrue back into the community to keep that standing charge low so that it can't just shoot up, and it'll be protected. So it won't be extracting profit as we see in so many schemes. We intend to roll it out across communities, working on identifying a local authority, maybe community energy organisation, and the distribution network operators using quite blunt data, so we can sort of see where it could land. And then when we've identified an area, we'll go in with the reach, engage and retain street by street engagement led by energy champions, backed by the digital Fairer Warmth platform. And that gives us access, as more and more people sort of put their data in and receive energy advice, we get proper data, not EPC data, but proper data on their energy use. And then from that, we can identify where there's clusters of demand. We can begin to work out the kind of costs it might cost us to do the street. And then when we've got about a third of people in a street signed up, showing interest, then we can deliver across the street. That's all the boreholes go into the street. Not necessarily everyone gets the retrofit, just the people who signed up. And then other people can join in second waves. So that helps us plan and phase the approach. That helps us deliver local jobs and skills, because we're not having the boom and bust, come in, fit, go away. And it helps us make sure we get it right, we monitor it, we can come back and rectify any issues, and we're hand-holding people and we're with them over the longer term. So we're testing the process at the moment on 3 demonstrator houses in Rossendale, owned by the council. That's going to help us validate the process and then work out how we replicate and scale up effectively with the customer in mind, but also how we save costs, how we procure. Under our funding, we're also looking at our governance structures. And I know Saskia, hello Saskia Huggins on the call, looking at governance structures around community-owned heat networks. We're looking at how the governance will work. We're looking at how we procure, including procuring for local, and critically our financial models and how we pay for all this and how we make it work for people. So we'll be writing it all down, getting it rolling it into a handbook, looking at what we do next in a much larger pilot. So that's a real whistle-stop tour. I'm sure you've probably got lots of questions. We'll refer you back to some of our Q&A, but I'll move on. Otherwise, we use up all the time. Back to you, Andy.
Thanks, Louise. Great summary of the project and what we're looking to achieve out of this. Net Zero Terrace Streets is a big partnership. And at the heart of that is Rossendale Valley Energy and Rossendale Borough Council. We're working hard on the ground to deliver these 3 demonstrator properties, learning key lessons and the like as we do. So to have a little bit of a look into how that partnership is working, I will pass you back over to Louise.
Yeah, me again. Sorry. Thanks, Andy. So we wanted to talk to you about how community energy organisation and a council are working together to deliver this project. So Rossendale Borough Council and Rossendale Valley Energy, we've worked in partnership now on this for 3 years. We came about through Valley Heritage securing £300,000 from the Community Renewal Fund, which asked the bigger question of how do we decarbonise Rossendale, and that identified the Terrace challenge because we've got so many terraces in Rossendale. And then so out of that, we set up Rossendale Valley Energy as a community benefit society. RVE has been really good at getting grants, including for our energy advice service, local area energy advice demonstrator. So we've had about 4 million of grants, obviously not just for RVE, that's across loads of partners. So we've done a lot of work to iterate our way through to where we're at now. But critically, we have a shared mission. So the council and Rossendale Valley Energy want to make sure no one is left behind in the energy transition, and that we get healthy communities with great housing that's resilient into the future, and that people can afford clean energy no matter where they live. And we don't want Lancashire to get left behind. So I'll hand over to Natalie in the council, and she'll talk about why they're on board.
Thanks very much, Louise. Welcome, everyone. Firstly, in case you didn't know where Rossendale Borough Council is, we're a small district council based in East Lancashire. We serve a population of around 71,000 residents across 14 wards and 4 townships: Haslingden, Rotherstall, Bacup and Whitworth. And as with many other areas in the northwest, we have a lot of terraced housing. Around 14,000 of our houses are terraces. So that's just over 40% of our total housing stock, which is a significant number. And because of this, we have a keen interest in being a part of developing the net zero terrace streets solution, and we're confident we bring a lot to the table. So firstly, as with any local authority, we are there for the long run. Partnership aligns with our strategies, climate change, economic development, and many more. We recognise there are many co-benefits to developing a project like this. We're also a democratic voice representing the people. We have a strong understanding of the communities and local businesses' needs. We have a range of skills and experience of works on homes, the streets, regeneration more recently in our town centres. And more practically, we've provided the 3 demonstrator houses to test out our approach. We are a local trusted local voice, and that's helped us with stakeholder engagement, which we'll talk about a little bit more as we get on to what we did to prepare for the works, the demonstrator works. And finally, we have access to additional resources specific to local authorities. So we've had a few successful workshops with the National Wealth Fund recently. So working with RVE has been critical to help tackle some of the barriers to achieving our target of net zero by 2030. A 2020 assessment showed that only 0.6% of emissions in Rossendale are from the council's own operations. Most of the emissions are from the borough as a whole, and 33% of those are from domestic buildings. And we're a really small local authority, so we realised we couldn't do that alone. We understood that it's critical to work in partnership with the community. Our housing stock is a huge challenge to decarbonise, and as John mentioned before, and Louise, we're losing out on some of the grants available because of that. So we see that there are clear and far-reaching benefits to testing and scaling up this approach in Rossendale. Not only will it help us reach our net zero goals, but it will go even further in other areas, increasing health, well-being, job opportunities and financial stability of our residents. So I'll hand you back to Louise to explain from RVE's perspective why they're involved and what they bring.
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah, so a community energy organisation like Rossendale Valley Energy brings a bunch of stuff to the council that they don't have. So we bring a lot of expertise in the technical expertise in the form of our directors and our staff, the ability to set to and write good funding bids that succeed and build really wide partnerships. I think you'll have seen the logos of the partnership which flashed up earlier. It's a big partnership with lots of different people bringing their expertise. We've also got knowledge and access to the local community, similar to the council, but different. Many of the directors are based in the community. We also bring huge motivation and energy. We're very activist and creative, as many of you on the call will be too. Where community energy groups are not faint-hearted and are used to working around a lot of barriers. Yeah, so that motivation shines through. We've also got access to opportunities for funding that councils can't apply for. And then we reach into much wider networks, a bit like through Community Energy England, for example, beyond the local government networks and beyond. So we wanted and needed to work with the council so that they take the project forward as the enabler, convener, local leader and administrative lead. They provide our office space and they give us access and approval to communities. There's that council backing, is that we're not just a bunch of chancers turning up with making a borehole in your street. It's official. Yeah, and so critically too for this, they provided the 3 demonstrator houses for us to install the works on and learn through. So yeah, it hasn't been without challenge. So I'll leave you, Natalie, to explain it.
Yeah. So the biggest challenge for us as a council will be officer capacity. We are, as I say, a really small, but we're extremely busy in our operations. We're fortunate to have officers working exclusively on the project. I work full-time on this thanks to our Innovate UK funding, but it does often need input from other departments who are extremely busy and can't always give the project priority, especially as we're only funded on this phase until November this year, and we've got some really tight timescales to work towards. Another challenge has been the uncertainty of working on an innovation project. Our differing attitudes to risk and uncertainty are something that we've had to work with and get comfortable with. We've had to be quite agile, and any sort of impromptu issues that come up, we've had to work out some mechanisms to deal with them as and when they arise. Having said all of that, though, we've pulled it off. We've run, as I say, 2 national welcome workshops that were really successful. We've had a successful workshop with the planning team at Rossendale Borough Council and a neighbouring council, and we've also been putting out communications about RVE's local energy advice services. We've tackled legal, financial, and finance and insurance issues related to demonstrator homes, and the list goes on. It's clear that we're achieving quite a lot. What do you think, Louise?
Yeah, when we look back, you can see how much we've achieved together. So that sort of net zero Terrace Street family is progressing forwards. We've moved on from asking, how do you decarbonise Rossendale, targeted in on the terraces as an issue or opportunity, worked out quite a lot about the solution connects to the grid under the Strategic Innovation Fund Alpha, which is off-gem funding with Electricity North West and some other DNOs. Then we had Innovate UK Pathfinder 1 funding, where we began looking at those technical or non-technical barriers around community engagement, finance, legals and service model. That's twinned up with the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero funding for the energy advice, which has helped us hone the Fairer Warmth app. So it's used as directly with residents and householders to access energy advice and see what funding they can get now, but also to be used by our energy champions as a client or customer management system as well, because we've discovered not a lot of people in some of our areas want to stick stuff on their phone and do it themselves. So we're using it so we can do face-to-face support. And then in this project period, we're putting in the demonstrators. And as I said, working on quite a lot of organizational, operational governance, quite a lot of legal stuff, developing the service model and the digital side of life for the customer journey, and really focusing on our modeling and our finance spreadsheets, talking to investors, working on procurement and contracting. So we've come a long way. Would we do it again? Yes, we would. Here we are, merrily working together with the council and the MP. These kind of collaborations are really important. And we've even won a couple of awards, and we've been shortlisted. Just heard we've been shortlisted for another award today. So yeah, would we work together again? Yes, we would. That's us winning some awards. Okie dokes. Back over to Andy, I think.
Thanks both. Yeah, brilliant. As you can see, yeah, we've come a very long way together in the last 3 years. So next up, as it says, we'll take a quick look at the demonstrator homes that we're rolling our sleeves up and installing a net zero Terrace Street solution in these real, very real properties. Once again, I will pass you back over to Natalie and Louise, who will talk you through this. Over to you again, Louise.
Sorry, I thought it was going to be Natalie, but it's me. That wasn't very professional. So yes, just to top and tail this bit. So the aim of, I've told you what the aim of the Net Zero Terrace Street project is. In this, what we're looking at is how we streamline what we do so it's smooth. And the way that we'll be doing that is developing our very own Net Zero Terrace Street standard. So we'll have a standard of the assessment we need to do and a standard of the retrofit. So that gets us to how we do enough assessment to then design a responsibly retrofitted house with the correct amount of heat demand for that ground source heat pump and hot water, and ideally done with the least disruption, not the lowest cost, but good cost, good value cost, and very high standards. We do not want to sling in things that then don't work, because we're staying for the long term. So that's what we're doing. We're learning from a lot of other places where things have gone well and things have gone wrong. So where we are in that line, you can see along the bottom, at the moment, we're mid retrofit, but we'll be talking to you about what we did once the design was done to then get ready for the retrofit. And a previous webinar talks through what we did around all that design. So we're cracking on along that. So I think I hand back to Natalie to talk about how much the council's done to get us ready to kick off that retrofit now.
Thank you, Louise. So in the last 5 months or so, my colleague Lauren and I, in close collaboration with RV, have been working hard to facilitate the demonstrator works. As I mentioned before, we're quite uniquely placed as a council to engage with a variety of stakeholders, and that's been a help to enable the works to actually take place. That shows the importance of the role of a local authority, even if they're not part of a joint venture or a local delivery vehicle. And one of the ways in which we've helped is in liaising with internal departments such as planning. So we spoke to our planning team early on about the works, which saved us the time and money of going through the formal pre-application advice process. And because the works are on council-owned land, applications had to go through Development Control Committee, which meets every 6 weeks. So we had to make sure that applications were valid and robust enough so that they could get to committee in line with our timescales, which, as we know, are extremely tight. For the retrofit applications, 2 of the properties were in a conservation area. So we established a relationship with the conservation officer early on. And by dealing promptly with questions and comments from them, we received approval for all applications in January. And for the borehole applications, we reached out to our water provider, United Utilities. They're a statutory consultee on borehole planning applications, as the work involves drilling close to their infrastructure. And despite some positive initial engagement, they wanted to add some conditions to the application, as they wanted to be sure that no damage would be done to their infrastructure. We were able to reassure United Utilities by providing CCTV sewer surveys before and after drilling and risk assessments from the drillers as well. And because we did this, they withdrew the conditions and we received approval for all applications in December's committee meeting. As a result of all of this, we're looking to continue working with United Utilities for the wider rollout of Net Zero Terrace Streets, they're quite keen to create an internal procedural guide for the staff to give advice and set expectations on future borehole planning applications, which will be extremely helpful when we come to roll out further. We have also been speaking with residents and businesses near the demonstrator sites to keep them updated and address any concerns that they may have about the works. We visited and delivered a briefing letter at one site and have been back last month to update them on the actual dates of the works and the kind of how they would be affected by it. So we had to close off a car park nearby. And as an extra precaution for the borehole drilling, we also handed out carbon monoxide monitors to those with premises in the immediate area. And at the other site, we completed an initial letter drop in December, and we'll be going back to speak with residents when we have a confirmed drilling date. As landlords, we've worked to ensure that everything was ready in the houses and permissions-wise for the retrofit and monitoring. Firstly, we created licenses for the boreholes to be drilled on council land for car park use and for retrofit works in the houses. Some of the things that we had to look at for that when we were drafting the terms were things like, what would the maintenance scheme look like? Are there any guarantees or warranties that come with the equipment? Who owns what infrastructure and equipment? What might go wrong? Is everyone adequately insured? Do we need any way leaves or easements of the land? If ownership is different, if it's two different owners. So that's an agreement a homeowner will need to have with a local delivery vehicle in the wider rollout. So we took a lot of learning away from that about the contracting process, and working with RVE will be refining this with our lawyers to come up with an approach that's easy to pick up and is replicable. So secondly, we made sure that the meters in the houses were smart meters enrolled onto the smart data communications network, and that they were working in credit mode rather than prepayment. We appreciate that there's a risk of customers falling into debt if they're in credit mode, and we are thinking very carefully about how to help people manage the bills and avoid getting into arrears. We know that the way that the home energy management system, the smart local energy system, will be designed is that once a customer has set their parameters for what they need for heating and hot water, the system will automatically keep this at optimum use. And it'll also take advantage of times in the day where energy is cheaper. That will help to make costs more manageable. And that's something that's looking to be developed in near funding and further strategic innovation fund work. That system will it'll need very little input from any local energy champions, but they may also be able to support in understanding the smart systems and making the most of those cheaper times where energy is cheaper. And we are also having a look at different approaches to billing. So rather than having larger sums taken out at once through direct debits or paying on receipt for bill, we're looking at budget cards or something similar so that they can kind of more frequently pay for their energy as and when they have the money to be able to do it. So we'll be keeping a close eye on usage and costs in the demonstrator homes to make sure that our tenants aren't overpaying or falling behind, and we will be offering support where needed on that. All throughout that, our tenants are the heart of the process. We and RVE's demonstrator lead, Amaryllis, are working closely with the tenant support workers and our housing team at the council to take as much care as possible, and RVE has worked hard to ensure that the contractors are putting the tenants at the centre of their approach. We want the delivery of this scheme to be as accessible and non-intrusive as possible, whilst also achieving that heat load reduction that we need for the scheme to work. We've learned a lot from all of these experiences, and we'll be sharing what the lessons that we've learned from them in our Net Zero Terrace Streets guide for local authorities later this year. And that will sit as an accompaniment to the wider Net Zero Terrace Streets handbook. I'll hand you back to Louise, who'll talk about what RVE has done to get prepped.
Thanks, Natalie. So yeah, alongside all of that preparatory work, Rossendale Valley Energy was getting cracking with selecting a contractor, negotiating how we did that. So there's a tension between how big architecture firms, who are also our retrofit designer, that's Buttress, would normally get a contractor, and how we wanted to do it, which was very local, and also because of our timelines, getting on with it quickly. So we went in the end with a negotiated procurement. We wanted someone used to working within houses which were occupied. So we've chosen a contractor called Koala. The quantity surveyors agreed good value for money. So that's forming a learning relationship with a very local company. There's been an enormous amount of work, as none of you be surprised, about contracting, checking insurance, due diligence, and so on. And then managing cash flows and deposits, particularly working with a small supplier. And then you've got the ever-changing scope of works, in that you get on the roof and you discover more things need mending than you thought. So we also have had some work around insurance, where we have to drill a borehole in an unlicensed and unregistered piece of land, for example. But I think I'm speaking to a community energy audience. You will be used to surmounting those kinds of issues, and we're writing all of these down so there's no nasty surprises for anybody else. We put a license into, we had to think about what would happen if we broke a kitchen cupboard or something like that. Who pays for it? So there was an issue with the council being kind of concerned that if there was additional cost, were they going to have to foot the bill, or would we be covering it as part of enabling works? So there's been quite a lot of learning around that. Were there any surprises? I don't actually think. The biggest surprise for me was it's really hard to rent a portaloo sometimes, or a welfare cabin, because you have to have hire in insurance. In terms of other things that we've learned, we're definitely learning through doing. We all know that retrofit can be hard. Even close quarters, I've evaluated various retrofit schemes. You learn new stuff every single time. So a big hand for Andy Pinches, who you've met here, and Amaryllis Goodspeed, who's our demonstration lead, who is spending quite a lot of time on site. What we learned about the contracting part was, although it was council specific, it was very much relevant for contracting with landlords and homeowners. So really useful learning. We also learned you can't assume everyone's told you everything, that they've done everything. So there is very much that you have a risk plan and so on, but you have to double check and you have to expect surprises and stay agile, because one lot of people assume that you've told the contractor something and so on. But I think that's probably common with any kind of physical infrastructure or contracting you're doing. Lots of interdependencies. And of course, we had a big storm partway through, had to pause works on the roof, but it's going surprisingly well, touch wood. And we will be capturing all of this, reviewing this, peer reviewing it, and then coming up with the next stage for the handbook. So very much learning by doing, small, then going bigger is the answer. So I'll hand back to Andy, because I know we're short on time, so we are giving you a bit of a more whiz through. Thanks.
Thanks, Louise. And Natalie for those valuable lessons. And the key to success is being prepared, but also being ready for the unexpected. I'll take you through very quickly the demonstrated properties and where we're up to with that. So we've kind of touched on this already. We had to apply for a road closure from the Highways Authority, and because we had to go to the county council, they had a lead time of 12 weeks. So we had to make sure that we scheduled that in good time. We also had to shut the road and the car park together. There's a lot of potentially dangerous and expensive equipment on site as they were drilling. So we needed to make sure that was fenced off and everything was stored away so that people couldn't gain access to that site. There was also 2 fire escapes that came out onto the back of a local business right into the compound. So we had to make sure that we put provision in there for them. While that compound was being constructed and the drilling equipment was being delivered, scaffolding was put up on the properties for roof inspections. They've been stripped and relaid, and they've put brackets on, ready for solar panels to be fitted. Boreholes for the ground source heat pumps were drilled to approximately between 100 and 120 meters. between the two on this first site. That's dependent on a number of different things, including geology, the size of the heat pump, and things like that. So the drill rig was quite small. It was a lot smaller than I was expecting, but it needed a big compound to accommodate the amount of water and grout that they needed to pump down the hole. One thing that did surprise me was that it wasn't actually that noisy. I was expecting it to be, like a jackhammer, kind of really loud and deafening, but it really wasn't. It wasn't louder than the kind of builder's compressor. And there were no vibrations that went along with that either. Work has also started internally. I've got a timeline on here. The picture on the left, you can see that we've had to extend the timbers in the roofs to make sure that we can fit the spec insulation in that was given to us by the architects. And you can see now on the picture on the right kind of how far it's come in the last few weeks. I took that photo this morning. That they've put the second level of insulation and are looking to skim that sometime tomorrow, Monday. So these demonstrations are not just about the retrofit work and the complexities of drilling in built-up areas, but it's about making a difference. So we're monitoring pretty much everything in quite a large degree of granularity, so that we can kind of build up that data set to optimize the system and make sure that it's performing as it should be, helping to keep people's bills low. So we're monitoring humidities, temperatures, pretty much. If you can monitor it, we are monitoring it. I will now pass back to a very key component to all of this, money. I will pass you back to Louise.
Okay, so yeah, how do you pay for all this? So we are progressing our financial modelling, and we are trying to get to a non-grant dependent scheme, because every time the grants change, everything's a nightmare. So the way we're doing this is we've got to take the cost of all the works and the cost of the all the capital costs, the operational and running costs over the long term. We've got to wrap some of that up in the standing charge that will be paid, and then we've got the moving charge, which is how much energy people use. Those two things together shouldn't really add up to more than what somebody who is already heating their house, not someone in a cold house, is spending. So we're using a figure, we're trying to beat a figure of around 1,500 quid a year, 1,700 a year. If you are in a cold house in extreme field poverty, not heating, we cannot save you money. You can't make money coming out of nowhere. But that's the formula we're trying to work on. So we're trying to beat quite a hard target, especially with the way the gas price is. We've done quite a lot of work around understanding the numbers, what you're paying for, how you repay the investor, how we charge the customers. And then we can see that we can get to economies of scale. So as we scale up, the costs do come down, and we are not being over optimistic about how far they come down. There's a lot of assumptions made all over the place, I think, about economies of scale people think they can achieve. We've still got to pay people. We've still got to pay for scaffolding. Things like borehole costs really come down significantly when you do a lot of them. So moving on from that, once we've, say, got a third of people in the house, in the street, we can then deliver. But then what we're looking at now is it is not currently investable. We are not claiming it is. If it was, everyone would be doing it. Octopus, OVO, everyone would be doing it. So it isn't at the moment in its entirety. And in part, that's because of the impossibility of that retrofit payback cost. It's one that everyone's struggling with. But what we find is if we can wrap up a load of grant funding, then we can maybe move to some subsidy model, maybe tapering it like the FIT and like the renewable heat incentives were. We can then move through to get to a scale where we can come off grant or subsidy dependence, because we are getting to a scale where we can see a positive return, which becomes investable. And you can see that briefly in this slide. It's still not particularly attractive. The really rough modelling, and we're being really open showing you this, rough modelling could get us up to around 4%, bit above. That's not enough to get Legal and General out of bed. But it shows how we can do it and begin to do it, working with impact investors, working with blended finance with government, which is what we're all being asked to do all the time, and which is what's so hard to do. So we are getting there. We've been speaking to investors. We've had all their feedback, their key questions are. So we're working really hard on that bit, and I'm really optimistic about it actually. And then moving on again, we've set up Looped Kick, because we're obviously not going to go out and knock on someone's door and go, do you want to join Net Zero Terrace Street? They'll be like, you what? So the sort of brand name currently is Looped Energy Communities. So we've established this as a community and interest company that will own and develop the standard, manage the handbook, do the work to facilitate with local authorities and local delivery partners, negotiate with government on key contracts and so on, and hold that quality assurance piece. We're trying to get that financed at the moment and develop those governance structures and really work towards finding funding for a 200 home pilot. I mean, really what we need to then do is do more and more of those, prove that case, and bring investment till it becomes an asset class. So we have a sort of a plan that phases us through various years to do that. I'm aware I'm really not giving you a lot of detail because we're short on time now. We can always run another session to feedback on this kind of thing another time. So that's just to let you know, we're working on governance and we're working very hard on the money. And I'll just hand you back over to John now to talk about Community Energy England's programmes to support your sector.
Yeah, I'll just quickly flag these because they're more general rather than specific. We can get on to questions, but yeah, there's 2 capacity building programs scaling up around the country. There's the Energy Learning Network, which is offering peer-to-peer mentoring, as well as some other kind of more guided, focused workshops to get you skilled up and confident and capable of doing community energy in your own area, and community energy pathways delivered by the organisation formerly known as Community Energy South, who are doing some brilliant work with councils on funded programmes to grow the sector in areas where there's less representation so far. But you can look those up some other time, and I'll hand you back to Andy. Thanks.
Thanks, John, and a big thank you to the rest of the speakers. As you can see from what we've presented to you, it's a big task, but by working together, it is possible. One of the key learnings that have come out of this is teamwork. Teamwork does make the dream work. It is really quite collaborative and really quite positive when we all sit down and work through things. But yeah, don't worry. It all looks rather daunting at present. We're documenting everything as Louise and Natalie have said, and everything will go down into one of the handbooks for both Net Zero Terrace Streets and the local authority work alongside, which will make it much easier. It's hard, but not impossible. So yeah, it goes without saying. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been crammed, and as we've said, we've been rushed for time. We'll get to questions. We won't cram them into the last 5 minutes now. We'll take all your questions away with us, and we will send them out to you with some answers. Don't worry, we will be looking as well to kind of do a live question time kind of event coming up sometime, I think in the next few months, sometime soon, so that we can answer those questions live on screen. You can visit our website, netzeroterracestreets.info, where you can sign up to the newsletter and stay up to date with everything that's going on. And before you go, if you could, it'd be really great if you could just fill out the poll that's just popped up on your screen. That just popped up right in front of everything for me. But if you could fill it out for us, it'd be really helpful. So yes, thank you very much. Before you do go, tell us about your terraces, kind of where you're at, where your local authority or what your area's plans might be for them, if any at all, and let's get a conversation going around how we can make this happen at that national level. So thank you very much again. Very big thanks to speakers, the event organisers, Community Energy England, RVE, RBC, and a big thank you to all of you for spending your lunchtime with us. Thanks again, and we will see you soon.